Hi, this is Jeff Conti, your YouTube knife mentor, and today I want to bring you along for the ride. I believe it or not, in 40 years of knife making, I've made a lot of tactical knives and camping knives and hunting knives and fishing knives, but I've never actually made a knife to use for bushcraft or that kind of extreme long-term survival where it's the only tool you have at hand, and so you kind of want to fill a lot of the gaps, maybe not very well in each case, but the best that you can with one tool. In this case, a knife. So I'm going to start with my details because I kind of want to get those down on paper before I actually start drawing. So how about bush or bushcraft? Let's see here, which I'm going to assume or guess, because I've never spent any time out in the field for a long period of time, more than a day or two, with just a knife, right? So, and that's what this is kind of geared towards. So I'm going to kind of guess what I've seen other people say and what I come up with in my own mind. So I would say medium chopping. I would say batoning. Obviously cutting. Maybe sticks. Sharpening. Stuff like that. I don't know, I guess I would say camp chores. So that's kind of where my mind is at right now. And so I have another field here that I want to start putting stuff into while I'm thinking of these ideas, right? What requirements would my blade have? I would think number one, first and foremost, my steel needs to be tough. I don't want the blade to break. I don't want it to chip. So let's see what else here. I guess I don't want it to be heavy. Let's see here. I want the handle to be tough also. And already I think I can start making some decisions. I'm just going to write my Carta, because that's about as tough as I can get, as far as I can think. I would go with G10. It's just not something I prefer to work in as a knife maker. It's one of those things I don't like. So my personal preference, certainly no downside to G10 as far as I'm concerned, in terms of its ability to withstand brutal tasks like batoning and things like that. Okay, so I think that this knife should have a stiff point. I-N-T. But I think it should be, you're going to like this, I think it should be pokey. Like a clip point maybe, or a straight point. In other words, not a drop point. I mean, if you're going to stab something like a piece of wood, maybe you're trying to get at some wood grubs or something, a drop point isn't the best pokey. This video is going straight to heck already. I definitely want it to have a full tang. I am a fan of tapered and skeletonized, and since I don't want the knife to be heavy already, I can say that tapered and skeletonized. Also, that works out because up here I said I wanted to be able to do some medium chopping. And so when you remove some of the weight out of the handle, that leaves the weight more forward of the blade, on the blade. So you're going to have a little bit more weight doing chopping when you've removed some of the weight from the handle. So, okay, I'm going to go with that for now. On my taper, I'm probably not going to taper it as thin as I normally would. I like a really thin taper, but usually that's because of aesthetics. But in this case, I'm going to reduce it pretty good, but I'm not going to take it all the way down to what I would normally do for, say, a hunting knife or something that's not going to get abused a lot. I'd like a little extra, I don't know, beef maybe? I don't know. If I ever wind up striking the end of the knife handle with a baton for some reason, you know, I don't want the... I don't know why it would. I don't know. I'll think about that. I may like it to be just as tapered as normal. Or maybe I'll do a tapered one like I normally do, and I'll do some testing. Okay, let's see here. Anything else up here? Yeah, you know what? You know you're going to be doing gutting animals. Let's see. Oh, fish. Cleaning. What else? I don't know. Small game. I would think, you know, bush-wise, the likelihood of coming across rabbits and small game and fish are a little bit more prolific than maybe deer and larger animals. I don't know. So you still want to be able to do all the tasks, right? So you probably don't, I probably don't want a 12-inch blade. So let's see, come back down to here. I'm going to say medium blade, medium length blade. So my normal blades would be somewhere between 4 and 6 inches. So a medium blade for me then would be 6 inches plus. How about I say that? 6 inches plus. Let's see here, what else? So I said I wanted tough steel, no break. Oh, okay, how about that? I want it to be fairly stain resistant. Which means blood and water. Right off the bat, I think already I've eliminated D2. D2 has a really nice hard steel, but it's not all that tough. It takes a really great edge and it holds it a long time, but it's a little more brittle. It gets harder and it's not as tough as some other steels. So I'm just going to say no D2. I guess I'm going to also rule out O1 and A2. A2 does, no, I'm not going to rule out A2 yet. A2 does have 5% chromium, so it might be a bit of a, it might be a good, so let's write down some possible steels. Let's see, yeah, I guess I could write them down. Let's say 440C, 154CM, A2, AUS8, which really 440C and AUS8 are very comparable, but you know, typically AUS8 is made outside the continental United States, and I do prefer to use American-made materials, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm not going to use AUS8. Okay, let's see what else here. Oh, you know, I'm going to want a good grip. So it might mean the form, but it also might mean texture. So, I don't know. I guess that's about all I can think of at this point. This video is already 9 or 10 minutes, so I guess I'll stop right there, and I'll use this as kind of my go-to list to start creating this knife. As soon as I stopped videoing, I just thought of something else I wanted to add to my requirements. I want to add a flat grind. How come my pen's not working? And probably it's going to be a saber grind. Saber or wide. So I think I'm going to pick one of these two. I do like wide grinds because they do last a little longer over time in terms of the blade geometry. I guess I could do a little drawing. With a flat grind, you get a long, wide, and you get, well, probably up into here somewhere, you know, with how long your blade is going to last before you wind up with a really steep, or you have to, when you sharpen, you have to go really far up to get back to, you know, a decent geometry for your edge. Whereas with a saber grind, you kind of start out at that length, right? And my drawing's not doing too good. Drawing looks like crap. But anyway, you know, you wind up with a little bit less usable edge until you wind up having to really do some significant sharpening or, you know, edge modifications to get a good, back to a good sharp edge. So there's a little bit of that. But the problem with flat grind, of course, is that you have a thinner edge at the beginning, so you have less support when you're doing some of these other tasks, you know, chopping, batoning, camp chores. So I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this one. I know a lot of people really prefer this saber grind. And they do get a sharp edge, but it just doesn't, in terms of how long it lasts, or how much effort it takes to resharpen it. I'm going to try to do that a little bit better here. Let's see. Let's say it looks like this. And then later on, you have to really aggressively change your sharpening profile to get back to a somewhat usable edge geometry versus the long flat grinds where you actually have you know, a much longer period of time before you need to do that. So I'll have to think about that one. Anyway, okay. I'll probably have some more decisions and thoughts and ideas. This is turning out to be a multiple segment video. I decided that I also wanted my field knife or survival knife or bush knife to be able to make fires. And one of the things to be able to make fires is to be able to strike a spark, right? Well, stainless steels, and I was talking previously about 440C and 154cm. I'm not sure about A2, I've never tried it, but these two won't strike a spark to beat whatever. They just won't do it. So in order to make a fire, we really need, as a requirement, we need a high carbon steel striker. To me, that means I'm still gonna have my stainless steel, but I'm going to add a small segment, you know, maybe about this big and that long, of like maybe a piece of file, something that is cut out and smooth, and then it's soldered into the knife handle so that it can be used as a steel striker, which means probably my handle is going to have an exposed, so let's say the handle, it's for whatever reason it's, you know, soldered in place, then I'm going to have to expose a piece of the micarta so that this striker is available. If you don't, of course, you have, you know, your micarta, if you look at it from the top, your micarta is like so, and there's nothing really exposed because these surfaces are all flat across each other. There's nothing exposed to hit on a piece of flint. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, I gotta add something like that into my, incorporate something like that into my knife. So if I come up with something else, I'll let you know. So I did come up with another idea. Instead of making the piece of high carbon flat in terms of the linear steel, what I was thinking of maybe is still incorporating a space for the high carbon, but I could in fact dome the high carbon. So now my handle still comes across like so, and I don't have to have this cut out area, which kind of makes it a little bit sharp on your hand when you're having this much space cut out. You know, if you're using it a lot in your palm, you kind of want as much support as you can get for your skin and whatnot. And by the way, being out in the woods is no time to be getting an opening in your space suit, so to speak. So this might be a better way to do it, is to just create a bit of a dome there in my piece of high carbon steel, my striker. And that would also, I think, when you have a bit of a dome, that makes an easier striking spot when you're trying to hit your flint chip on something than it does a flat spot. So keep thinking about that. Anyway, let's see what happens. So I was thinking another aspect of the design, or a requirement. I think that my point, I said I wanted something that was going to be pokey, like, right, a clip or a strike point, certainly not a drop point, which means not just the profile needs to, you know, come along and go down, but you know, there's going to be maybe a grind, right, like a false grind or something like that. So I think I'm going to add in a false grind, a stiff point with a false edge. I think that's going to give me a little bit finer point if I make this real wide. When I do the grind, then it's certainly going to be pokier. I'm just going to keep using that stupid word. Anyway, it's still going to be pokier, but it's also going to be weaker. So I'm going to want this to be kind of, you know, very slim in terms of the width of my actual false grind. And that will give me a little bit more, I don't know, if I use this thing to actually stab something, who knows, you know. I do remember a story of a guy hiding alongside a trail where deer came by, and he actually, you know, jumped on a deer and killed it with his knife. You know, and then there's always the attach your knife to a spear kind of an idea. So you do want a point that will drive relatively easily into your game, assuming you use it that way. But this distance also of the actual false edge and the length of the knife, I think I'm going to want that to be like 1/3 versus 2/3. Something like that. I don't know exactly how much, but I'm going to add that to my list of requirements. So you can see clearly how messy this is, but I'm certainly getting some details fleshed in. So I'm going to add this to my list. I think it's time for me to start drawing now. I think I'm going to actually start putting some of this down in lines on paper. And I usually start off with some kind of overall design that I start modifying. When I start doing something like this, I'll start adding, like I'll put in a rectangle, the size that I think the knife blade should be, and then another rectangle for the handle, and see how those all kind of work out. And you'll also notice, hopefully I'm able to show that pretty easy for you on the next clip, or should I say the next video, when I do the actual drawings. Sometimes I change the angle of the handle to the blade, right? So there's some kind of a differentiation. Rather than straight across, you know, the center line of the handle is in line, center line with the edge. That works out really well if you attach your knife to a spear, but it's not so good if you're using it for batoning and chopping. So I'm gonna have to think about that. I'll do 2 or 3 designs, maybe different drawings, and I'll keep modifying it until I get closer to what I really want. So, all right, let's see what happens. I think I'm done with this, my requirements and my use part. So I will sign off now. This is Jeff Conti, your YouTube knife mentor. I want you to go out and have fun making a knife.